All right, today I'm going to be reading a short story I wrote called Empty House. The electricity crackles under my skin as signals are forced through disjointed nerves, the anticipation of drawing in a more meaningful breath than the previous one before wrapping your fingers around the cold metal. You try to anticipate what you are about to experience by reflecting on perhaps not the great memories, but by shielding yourselves with the more realistic, mundane ones. Because you have both seen the wonderful days that made you wish that you somehow found this person sooner, and the nights that still make you dive headfirst into that hurricane of self destruction if it would somehow give you a chance to forget it. You soak your expectations into only the familiar shallow waters. But how can anything be familiar when even the pull of a doorknob intimidates you? This day has always loomed over you, once in a vague imagination. Now, this is your reality. This is the very air that you breathe now. You twist your wrist. You do so with the same level of unfamiliarity as you did the first time, almost an intruder, because this time you do not hear that familiar "Come in." You pull the door open. It peels back the hollowness obscured by the outside walls. With one foot inside and the other still planted in denial, you recall that last chaotic graveyard shift that you shared, that final memory that ended with him waving at you from the back of the ambulance. You come to in order to push the door shut. You turn back around and now accept that this hollow building used to be a home. Like a splinter embedded in flesh, the idea still clings to you that he's still sitting in this house like he always is. You flick on the living room lights. Instead of that warm but exhausted face, you just notice the quilt draped over the recliner that he lived and died in. This threatens your very flow of blood. Your very life force is under attack of that night where you stayed up all night, helplessly dying with him, where sleep deprived, you concocted cocktails of opioids administered to them in a fruitless attempt to ease the pain. It was enough medication to kill you several times over, but it had no effect on this man. Maybe you should have filled up the syringe all the way and purged his throat with the morphine, just speed up the inevitable. Was it cruel to help him stay alive? As the sun fell and then rose, he was unable to say anything that was not a cry for help. You still hear him writhing in pain. Help me, help me, help me, as you watch his face contort in the intensity. Except the pain is over. You're just staring at a blank chair. You blink again at that empty recliner that he survived in. There still remains a fierce curiosity in your search for signs of life. The recliner is empty. The hospice supplies must have been taken to a different patient. There are flower arrangements from the funeral in the living room. You are still familiar with his presence, and it remains in this house. If he is not in the recliner, he must be in his room. As you did before, you draw in that deep breath. You numb yourself with the familiarity, and you grasp the doorknob with your sweaty right hand. You pull the metal embedded in pink wood, and you wonder what life would be like after this moment. Will you remember how significant this specific second is next year? You make a promise to this remaining presence that you will remember it. You will remember this moment. The moment where you found the courage to accept that his existence has become a past that can only be studied. You recall the words that have somehow been uttered in your history. Memories fade through the friction of recalling them. Your greatest fear in the moment. It grips you. It grips your hand. You twist the copper doorknob with your shoulder because your wrist still refused to rotate. You begin to step into his bedroom, but you do not feel where your foot landed. Your center of gravity has shifted beyond the point of a swift recovery. You start a familiar return to the floor. Your arms do not obey instinct. They are unable to brace you from the impact of sleep paralysis. All right. Thanks for listening.